Our encouragement would be continue to invest in the trades, continue to invest in training, the different internships and all the different things, as well as finding a company like ours who focuses in this space, to help you solve the gap.
Welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. I'm Tim. I'm joined here with my partner Brett from Skillwork, and this podcast. Remember, we just gathered to talk about industry trends, topics, emerging issues, everything really surrounding the skilled trades. And to that point, today we're going to be addressing a topic that we hear probably more frequently than any other, and that is simply, where are the skilled laborers? Where are the people that we need to be able to fill our need, to grow our business, to keep our production lines going? And like everything else that we've gone through over the last 18 months or so, COVID had a big impact. It impacted the labor market probably like nothing we've ever seen in our lifetime. Probably not since World War II have we seen something that impacted the labor market to this degree. And specifically the skilled labor market, it impacted it for a variety of reasons. As a matter of fact, there was an article we subscribe and we read a lot of articles and research from the Staffing Industry Analysis. SIA is an organization focused on the staffing industry, and there was an article recently that was written by Timothy Landheis, and in the article, and Timothy, we want to thank you for putting that together. It was very concise and well put together. And in that, he talked about, in this report, that for the light industrial and especially hospitality sectors of the labor market, the shortage that we're experiencing right now had never been seen before. I think he called it extreme. And we would agree, Brett, in conversations with many of our clients, more in the manufacturing, maybe the heavy industrial and construction, that it's the worst they've ever seen in their careers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. So, we talk about it. I spent 30 plus years in the manufacturing space, so I have a lot of relationships with either individuals that are running facilities, and then obviously in our business today, we talk to a lot of those facilities. Right. And so, I know one example, recent. So we're working with a client of ours, and they're actually consolidating 3 facilities into one. And so they're closing two facilities, and they're going to move all that production into another facility. And we're in there helping them with some staffing with their skilled trades folks during this process. And now I don't know how many times it's been, but they've had to extend the closures of those plants. And I finally found out recently the reason is the new facility they built on a whole new area. They can't get it staffed. That the reason they're continuing to have to keep these other, because obviously when they planned this out, they didn't know this was going to happen.
Right.
And you've already got this extreme issue of finding light industrial production operators, that type of work. And so literally they've had to do multiple extensions of keeping these other plants simply because they're just basically, we can't get it staffed to run it.
Yeah. I mean, some of these things we're going to talk about, why can't they find the staff, are fairly well known, but it's worth us restating some of these, because I think there's some optimism as well that we need to share. As a matter of fact, in the article that Mr. Landheis wrote and that we referenced earlier, he gives some reasons for the labor shortage overall, some of which extend into the manufacturing construction sector, as well as some reasons for optimism. So we're going to hit on a few of those, but then I think we're going to pivot to, in our sector, there's some things that were existing prior to COVID. It's not all COVID, and it's not all going to go away as we rebound from COVID. So we want to make sure we differentiate a little bit from some of the points that were made in the article. But to reference those things that he spoke about, he said, listen, here's some of the reasons for the shortage. The first and 800-pound gorilla in the room is concern about health and safety of the employees. And that's kept a lot of people away from the workforce. There's still continue to be fears out there, and even in some companies from the hiring side, fears over liability. They're just not certain. So there's a lot of pent up labor market that is either not willing to come back or not able to come back because of fear over health and safety. But the optimistic side of that, and there's some optimism that's coming with that as well.
Well, I think, in the article that we're referring to, and it, as Tim said, it was really more specifically dealing with light industrial and hospitality, which is clearly the sectors that have seen the largest impact from COVID. We don't work in that space. We don't solve solutions to that space. We solve solutions in the skilled trade space. So we're going to kind of layer those two and say, this is what we saw. We have people ask us all the time. My wife asks me, quite often about, these three different things that we're going to hit on here in a minute, health and safety being the first one. People will ask, well, how is that impacting what we do in the skilled trade space? And so I think what we want to try to do today is try and say it does have some impact,
sure,
but it doesn't have near the impact that it is having in these. And I think what we'll tie together today too would be to say I think there's very logical optimism that why you should believe that the light industrial and hospitality segment, those are going to start to see pretty fast improvement. I'm not as convinced, as we'll talk about, that we're going to see it in our sector, and we're going to talk about that. But health and safety, one, and the obvious reason why there should be optimism in that is, as we're now, the number of COVID cases nationwide are now consistently, month over month, are hitting the lowest levels since the pandemic began. So just the fact that, you've got less and less, and clearly, sadly for those who lost their life, due to COVID in this time, we're seeing less and less, of that as well. So just the general confidence to go back into the workforce,
sure,
is happening. And
restaurants, hotels, you travel around, you see that more and more people are coming back, but there is a lag to get those folks to come back from work. And I think a bigger impact, the next one we'll talk about, is the reason for the shortage and reason for optimism that does touch on our sector a little bit more directly, is that the forced closures that took place during COVID, particularly in schools and daycares.
Yep.
Because many of our skilled workers, they're family, and both husband and wife work, and they have kids. So schools close, daycares close. One or both of the parent have to make accommodations for that. So that is a definite impact, and that continues to be an impact, although more and more states are opening up. More and more our schools are opening up, although we're in summertime right now. Daycares are opening up, so that's getting better. So there's reason for optimism there. It was a real thing that many could not go to work simply because they had to be there for their kids. It's a choice that had to be made, and certainly respect that. But that is getting better simply because more and more of that is opening up. So impact, yes. Optimism, also yes.
Yes. And then the other reason you hear it talked a lot about, and we always choose to stay out of the political forum on this podcast, so this isn't a political statement, but obviously the federal unemployment benefits and the extension of those, and the additional, a lot of people talk about it, the extra $300 that incentivized individuals, that was all put in place because of 1 and 2, the health and safety of individuals who couldn't go to work, the forced closures of restaurants, and then the issues of schools and daycares. All of that led to the need for federal benefits to help families through this unprecedented time. Some people would argue that maybe it lasted too long. Obviously, if you were on those benefits and you didn't have your job back yet, you probably didn't think it went too long. And so, but that is the reality of that is because now you do have all of this reopening. At least half of the states have now are ending those benefits, which is whether you agree with it or not, it is going to require people to go back out into the workforce, which has to happen. I mean, you can't keep the businesses running if you don't have the individuals. And I think it's better, God created us to work, and I think we feel better about ourselves when we're working, as long as it's safe to do so.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers coming back into the workforce are strong, and in a vacuum they look optimistic, but the numbers that are still unemployed and that are available to come back to work, I mean, there is a huge pool of available workers that are out there. We just need to continue to look for opportunities to bring them back in the workforce. So COVID clearly had a big impact on all of this, Brett, but for sure. But we want to make sure that we pivot a little bit and talk about our focus area, which are skilled craftsmen that tend to work in more heavy manufacturing, construction, specialty services. And we were talking about before we went on the air here that a lot of those guys continued to work right through COVID. As a matter of fact, a lot of them worked more. And there was definitely a drop-off in available skilled tradesmen, but there were some things that existed prior to 2020 when COVID hit that didn't go away because of COVID, and the problems that existed then still we're gonna be dealing with post-COVID.
No doubt. I think a bit of our message, while there should be, and I would agree, there should be optimism. Obviously, we're seeing it in the unemployment numbers. The numbers are coming down. People are going back to work, but for our clients right now, we've probably in the last 3 or 4 months, we've probably seen the largest surge in clients coming to us looking for help in the skilled trades as we've ever seen. And so if you're not a client of ours and you're looking at all this and you're reading this information and you're saying, oh, well, good, they're going to get rid of those, I'm going to get people back, I would say that's a false optimism for the skilled trade space. And because, as we'll unpack, this if anything, we would propose, and I think the facts back it up, that COVID actually exacerbated the skilled trade issue that was already there prior to COVID. And those individuals, Tim, to your point, yeah, some of them were not able, to be in the workplace at this time. Some of them had to deal with family things. It definitely had some impact, but overall, I think we'll kind of talk about that COVID going away is not going to solve your skilled trade issue. Matter of fact, it might have made it worse. So to kind of set that thought a little bit, I think we've talked about this in many podcasts prior, but I think it's important for us to kind of back up and say, what was the skilled trade shortage situation prior to 2020?
Right.
Well, it's well documented that prior to 2020, the shortage was over 1 million workers. There was over 1 million skilled trade individuals needed in construction, manufacturing, in the different sectors, auto mechanic, you name it, that just weren't there. It had nothing to do with a pandemic. And so prior to COVID and the impacts of it, it was also well documented and well studied, and we'll talk about it here in a second, kind of a little bit of the why, but by 2025, nothing to do with COVID, they expected that number to grow to 2 million.
Yeah.
And so we can talk a little bit, Tim, about kind of why is that? Why do we have this skilled trade shortage, nothing to do with COVID?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because, as you mentioned, definitely made things more challenging, COVID, no doubt about it, for everybody in all areas of life. We could go on and on. But it's important to recognize that while there's, like you mentioned, hope for optimism, and we're seeing it, this challenge of skilled tradesmen is going to be there, and we think it's actually going to be accelerated. Mm-hmm. So some of these things we're talking about were like the aging workforce. The amount of guys that really know how to use their hands and their tools to be able to troubleshoot, to solve, to fix, to repair, to bring things online, that's an aging population. We've talked about, and it's well documented in previous podcasts, that we are not emphasizing skilled trades to our younger generation. Everything is being pushed towards higher education. We've talked ad nauseum about, the amount of young people that are going into 4 and 5 and 6 year college degrees and everything that goes along with that in other industries, and they're not going into the skilled trade. So you have an aging population. You're not replacing it with a newer population, although we are beginning to see some of that shift, thank goodness. So simple math, that over the next 5 years, as more baby boomers are retiring, and some of the things we talked about where there were forced closures of plants or furloughs during COVID, some of those guys just decided, hey, I'm not coming back. Right. I was planning to retire in 3 to 5 years. I'm just doing it now. So they're not coming back, and these are the guys that companies really depended on. So it's crucial to see that those factors that we talked about prior to COVID are still there, and they're not going to get better overnight.
No, the reason why all of the projections showed that we were going to go from 1 million short to 2 million short, even though we've been emphasizing for several years now the trade schools and hey, not everybody needs a 4-year education. Still, that trend was still going to go there. And the big driver of that was, as Tim knows, I'm a numbers guy. And so, I like to make the statement, that, numbers don't lie, people do. But math is math. And the math shows that the number of baby boomers that are going to leave the workforce over the next 5 years is more than the people coming behind it. And so that's why you were going to see that climb. Tim and I would propose, and not just propose, we're seeing it, is that COVID accelerated that issue because some of those people that would have waited opted to go ahead and just out of health or just, hey, I've been home for 6 months, I'm just not coming back.
Oh, yeah.
And so the other big one, that is driving this shortage and making it a real challenge, and that is we did a podcast a while back, I don't remember what number it was, on the fourth industrial revolution, and basically that is just the movement towards more automation and more sophisticated technology in the facilities. I use the example, it helps me, and I have an example of, if you think about it, it hasn't been that long that today we all walk around, or most of us walk around, with basically a smartphone, which is in essence a computer in our pocket. And we do everything from communication to travel to banking. It all happens on this phone. And it hasn't been, while it seems like it's been around forever, reality is it hasn't been around for very long. And so I use that example to say, so think about that. Think about how fast that technology has changed our lives.
Right.
And apply that to the manufacturing and the construction space, and recognize that same technology or types of technology, advancement in technology, is starting to happen. It's already happening in these facilities. We have some facilities now that are extremely highly automated, very technical, what they call smart systems and so forth, where the equipment talks to each other and so forth. That skilled trade individual is a different person than I always used to say, I love the guy that could change the oil in his truck, and he used to come and work for me in the plant as well. Unless he gets some more education and some certifications, he's not going to be able to work on this high-tech equipment. So that you got this older population leaving with the experience, you got a shortage coming behind them, and now you're elevating the need for the technology. It's a problem that continues to roll.
Yeah, so it's this, increasing demand for workers that have a much different skill set, and those are hard to come by. So this is going to drive the challenge that we talked about, where it's going to continue to be a huge challenge for companies to be able to find the skilled craftsmen, skilled tradesmen they need. And you mentioned some of the more experienced baby boomers, guys from our generation. A lot of times they're reluctant to go get that advanced education and training. So we want to encourage you, you can teach an old dog new tricks, but all these things are combining to create even a larger shortage that you're going to be facing. Nothing to do with COVID at all. As a matter of fact, I think it probably accelerated technology, because there's more. Every time there is a huge challenge to our country, we respond with new invention, new technology, and we're seeing that. So that's going to drive this even faster, I believe. So that kind of gives us a little background on what got us here and the continued evolution of the shortage that we're facing right now. And we all often say here that did not happen overnight, although it's happening at an increasingly rapid pace, and it's not going to get fixed overnight. Whereas light industrial and hospitality may come back quicker post-COVID, this problem we feel like is going to take a little bit more time and effort, and it's what we think about every day, all day.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think what we wanted to, because the context, there's a lot of talk about post-COVID and the workforce and the work shortage and so forth. And I just think we felt it was good to spend a little time creating some distinction. If you're a client or if you're a company out there, and obviously you need to have optimism that you're going to be able. I mean, I've talked to some folks in the plants, and they're literally, they just don't know what to do. They cannot find people. And so they are hoping and praying that some of the things that the article we referred to earlier is talking about, and states opening up and daycares opening up and less cases and all these things, benefits going away, that's going to drive that. I think our challenge is, I think it's a false sense of optimism to think that the skilled trade issue that was already a growing problem prior to COVID, that somehow coming out of COVID, it suddenly got better. Matter of fact, as Tim has said, we would suggest it probably accelerated it. So because there was things that COVID did impact, short and long term, that probably in the end created. I don't think that the idea of going from 1 million to 2 million necessarily, I don't think it caused necessarily the 2 million to become 2.5 million. It just got us there faster.
Yeah, instead of a 5-year timeline, it may be 3 or something like that. So, we definitely agree with Mr. Landheis, Timothy, that, there's a lot of optimism, and we think it's going to help a lot across all areas, but also just a little bit of, balancing that with the reality of this particular space that we focus on, which are skilled craftsmen. So it's really important to recognize that, and while we do see a lot of optimism as well with respect to, there does look across the spectrum that there is more focus and emphasis and culture getting behind pursuing skilled trades as a career path for the next generation. It's a great opportunity. If you're a skilled tradesperson or interested in this and you're looking into this podcast, great opportunity for you to travel, to explore, to make a great living. So, and leverage your interest in high technology even. So there's a lot of opportunity for you, and we are optimistic about the future, but we also recognize there's going to be challenges ahead. So, bottom line, I think to wrap up our discussion here, that we are coming out of one of the things, COVID, that one of the biggest impacts to the workforce, not just in our lives, but probably in history, this will be looked at. But certainly our generation. This is our generational challenge. It really is in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's true, and we don't want to come across as sounding skeptical or negative about the optimism of coming out of the COVID and the other. I think it's more the reality that you needed a plan of how you were going to solve your skilled trade talent shortage prior to COVID. You're still going to need that plan, and maybe even a little more so. So our encouragement would be continue to invest in the trades, continue to invest in training, in the different internships and all the different things, as well as finding a company like ours who focuses in this space, to help you solve the gap of finding the skilled trades.
Yeah. So again, as Brett mentioned, Skillwork, this is what we do. It's what we focused on every day, all day. So if you're finding yourself as maybe an organization that's having a tough time finding the skilled craftsmen, the tradesmen that you need to be able to grow, to build, to answer the demand of your customers, reach out to us. We'd love to see if we can help you, be your partner. If you are a skilled craftsman and you're looking for a new opportunity to take advantage of some of the things that we spoke about, again, reach out to us at skillwork.com. We'd love to talk to you about the opportunity we have for you and to let you take advantage of the exciting new future that we're looking at here over the next decade or so. So until next time, we again thank you very much for your time and attention to the Skillwork Forum. Have a great day.